Willow class! Welcome to my cosy reading chair. This is my favourite place in my whole house to come and hide away and to read books, and only I sit in this chair usually. So I thought this was a great location for us to read a very important chapter in Fantastic Mr. Fox. So today I'm going to read you chapter 12, Badger. Mr. Fox and the three remaining small foxes dug fast and straight. They were all too excited now to feel hungry or tired. They knew they were going to have a whacking great feast before long, and the fact that it was none other than Boggis's chickens they were going to eat made them churgle with laughter every time they thought of it. It was lovely to realise that while the fat farmer was sitting up there on the hill waiting for them to starve, he was also giving them their dinner without knowing it. "Keep digging," said Mr. Fox. "It's not much further." All of a sudden, a deep voice above their heads said, "Who goes there?" The foxes jumped. They looked up quickly and they saw, peeking through a small hole in the roof of the tunnel, a long black pointed furry face. "Badger!" cried Mr. Fox. "Foxy!" cried Badger. "My goodness me, I'm glad I found someone at last. I've been digging round in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am." Badger made a hole in the ceiling bigger, and he dropped down beside the foxes. A small badger, his son, dropped down after him. "Haven't you heard what's happening on the hill?" said Badger excitedly. "It's chaos! Half the wood has disappeared, and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death." "Who's we?" asked Mr. Fox. "All us diggers. That's me, and Mole, and Rabbit, and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots. He's now hiding down my hole with Mrs. Weasel and 6 kids. What on earth are we going to do, Foxy? I think we're finished." Mr. Fox looked at his 3 children and smiled. The children smiled back, sharing his secret. What secret is it that he's got? Can you remember? What does Fox know that Badger doesn't? "My dear old Badger," he said, "this mess you're in, it's all my fault." "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously, "and the farmers are not giving up till they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well. It means everyone on the hill." Badger sat down and put a paw around his small son. "We're done for," he said softly. "My poor wife up there, she's so weak she can't dig another yard." "Nor can mine," said Mr. Fox. "And yet, at this very minute, she is preparing for me and my children the most delicious feast of plump, juicy chickens." "Stop!" cried Badger. "Don't tease me, I can't stand it." "It's true," said the small fox. "Dad's not teasing. We've got chickens galore." "And because everything is my fault," Mr. Fox said, "I invite you to share the feast. I invite everyone to share it. You and Mole and Rabbit and Weasel and all your wives and children. There'll be plenty to go round, I assure you." "You mean it?" cried Badger. "You really mean it?" Mr. Fox pushed his face close to Badger's and whispered, "Do you know where I've just been?" "Where?" "Right inside Boggs's chicken house number 1. "No." "Yes, but that is nothing to where we're going now. You've come just at the right moment, my dear Badger. You can help us dig. And in the meanwhile, your small son can run back to Mrs. Badger and all the others and spread the good news." Mr. Fox turned to Small Badger and said, "Tell them they're invited to Fox's feast. Tell them to all come down here, follow this tunnel, and you'll find my home." "Oh, yes, Mr. Fox," said Small Badger. "Yes, sir, right away, sir. Oh, thank you, sir." And he scrambled quickly back through the hole in the roof of the tunnel and disappeared. Now, today, we're going to be using what we've learnt from the book about what had happened to Mr. Badger, and we're going to do some work on making a timeline of Badger's experiences while he's underground and the farmers are holding them hostage under the hill. And we're going to use that timeline later in the week to make a diary of Badger's experiences. So, are you ready? Let's go. Okay, So today we're going to be making a timeline of Badger's experiences for him and his family under the hill. So I've got a really large piece of paper because I think it'll be easier for me to show you, but I don't expect you to use a massive piece of paper like this. You can if you want, but equally you could do it in your book. You could do it across a double page spread if that's more helpful to you to spread it out. It will be clearer for you if you spread it out a little bit more. If you make it really, really small and bunched up, it's going to be harder for you to get all the detail you need to use this to do your writing later on in the week. This is what I'm going to do first. I'm going to draw just a wiggly line, like a sort of pathway, okay? And this path is Badger's journey through the story, okay? Now, the story focuses mainly on the Fox family and what happened to them. So we know an awful lot of detail from Roald Dahl about the experiences of the Fox family from the very beginning of this incident when they were all stuck under the hill. But we don't know a lot about what happened to the other families. So the work that we're doing today, we're going to have to do a little bit of guesswork. We're going to have to take what we know about the story, what we know about what happened to Mr. Fox, what we know about what the farmers did, and we're going to have to make some really clever guesses about what might have happened to the Badger family, okay? So if we look back at the story, and having your copy of the story while we do this is really going to be helpful, okay? I've got my copy of the story here next to me and I can refer to it as we go through. So let's think right back to the very beginning, near the beginning of the story, after Mr. Fox had been stealing from the farmers. And after his tail got shot off, they all got stuck inside the hill, didn't they? The farmers camped out so that they couldn't escape. So if that happened to the Fox family, it's likely that that also happened to the Badger family, that the Badger family got stuck and weren't able to escape. So if we're telling Mr. Badger's version of events, I think that's quite a good place to start, where Mr. Badger and his family are stuck under the hill. Okay, so I don't need to write that in lots of detail. I'm just writing notes and reminders that are going to help me when I come to do my writing. So here we've got Badger and family trapped under the hill. That's the first thing on my timeline that's going to have happened. So think back to what you know about the story from the experiences of the foxes. Once they got trapped under the hill, and you remember the chapter where the farmers were digging with shovels and they got stuck, what happened next? What did the farmers do next when they couldn't catch Mr. Fox? Can you remember? That's right, they got their mechanical diggers, didn't they? Now, I'm going to put that as the next thing on here. So if the foxes could hear the banging and shaking and all the noises from the mechanical diggers, I bet you that the Badger and his family could hear them too and would probably be terrified by those. So the next thing I'm going to add to my list is about them hearing the noises and the shaking and the rumbling of the mechanical diggers. Because remember, the Badgers wouldn't actually know what they were if they were stuck underground, would they? They would have no idea what those noises were. So here I'm going to write, and I'm going to number these, I think, on my storyline, because it will help me to remember which order they go in. Okay, so here's my second addition to my Badger timeline. The Badger family hear loud noises and they feel the ground shake when they're under the hill. Now, if you were the Badger family and you were trapped underground and you couldn't get out and you could hear all these loud noises and the ground shaking, what would you do? Well, what did the foxes do? The foxes tried to escape and couldn't. But what do you think the Badgers did? Remember, Mr. Badger has got young children. He's got small badgers who live with him. He was probably quite scared. So I wonder what he did. Now, the story doesn't tell us exactly what he did at this point, but we could make a best guess, couldn't we? Let's look back at the chapter that we just read, because that will give us some clues, okay? So, I'm glad I found someone at last. I've been digging around in circles for 3 days and nights, and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am. Haven't you heard what's happening up on the hill? Badger said excitedly. It's chaos. Half the wood has disappeared, and there are men with guns all over the countryside. None of us can get out, even at night. We're all starving to death. So what we do know from that is something that Mr. Badger did. Can you remember what it was? I found someone at last. I've been digging round in circles for 3 days and 3 nights, and I haven't the foggiest idea where I am. So, that tells me that Mr. Badger went out to try and find a way out. He left his home with his family and went to try and find a way out. So I imagine before he could do that, his family decided to hide in their home. Do you know what a badger's home is called? It's called a set. Badgers live in a set. So, number 3 for me is going to be badger family hide in their set. So here I've got badger family hide in their set. That's my 3rd event on my badger timeline. Okay, let's look back at our text to find out what might have happened next to the badgers. So we've got that he's been digging around for 3 days and nights, but we need to decide, do you think that has happened next, or did something else happen before he tried to dig his way out? None of us can get out, even at night, and we're all starving to death. Who's we? Said Mr. Fox. All us diggers. That's me and Mole and Rabbit and all our wives and children. Even Weasel, who can usually sneak out of the tightest spots, is right now hiding down in my hole with Mrs. Weasel and the 6 kids. So, what happened after they all started hiding in their sets and started getting really hungry? Who turned up at Badger's set to try and hide with them? That's right, he had some visitors. So think about what you think happened next. Which order do you guess that the visitors came to Badger's set? And then at what point do you think Badger decided to go out and start to find a way out, to dig for 3 days and 3 nights? If it was before Mr. Weasel and his family arrived, would Badger have known that they were there? Probably not. So, the object of today's exercise is for you to try and use the text to help you guess what order did things happen to Mr. Badger in and his family. What happened to them and in what order did they happen, okay? So I'll give you some clues of other things that you could add that you can decide where you think they go. So we've already got Badger and his family trapped under the hill. They hear loud noises and the ground starts to shake. Then they hide in their set. Other things you could include could be they start running out of food and they start getting really hungry or starving. The mole family come and visit them. The rabbit family come and visit them. The weasel family come and hide with them. Finally, it gets so bad they're all so starving that Mr. Badger decides to go out and try and dig his way out, just like the foxes did. And he digs for 3 days and 3 nights until finally he meets and bumps into Mr. Fox. And when he meets Mr. Fox, what's his reaction? "I know it's your fault," said Badger furiously. "And the farmers are not giving up till they've got you. Unfortunately, that means us as well." How did Badger react to meeting Mr. Fox? Was he pleased to see him? Or was he angry at him? How did he feel about Mr. Fox? Did he blame Mr. Fox for the situation that he'd found himself and his family in? So, that's your task today. You have got to create a timeline of Badger's story, of what happened to Badger and his family from the moment starting when the farmers started digging above the hill, and finishing when Badger met Fox in the tunnel. Okay, what happened to Badger during that time? And like I said, some of it is in the text and some of it you have to try and guess. You have to infer from what you already know about the story, okay? And see if you can put them in what you think would be a logical order, right? It's really important that you think carefully about this and lay it out so it's easy for you to see, because you're going to use this to do some writing later in the week. By all means, on your storyline or timeline, you can include some drawings if it helps you, but make sure that you're really clear about the key events that would have happened to Mr. Badger's family, and probably about 5, no less than 5. You definitely could come up with more than 5, but certainly no less than 5. Starting when the family are trapped under the hill because the farmers start to camp out above the foxhole, and finishing when Mr. Badger meets Fox in the tunnel. Okay? Good luck.